Her knees hit sun-baked concrete so hard the heat stung through jeans. Cuffs cinched tight behind her, metal-biting skin. Sheriff Clayton Red, 58, weathered and smug, pressed a boot to her shoulder and chuckled like it was entertainment. Her federal credentials skittered away, flashing once in the light, then landing face down. "Prove it, honey!" His drawl dripped contempt. Deputies laughed along. Someone filmed from 2 steps back, steady-handed. A handful of motorists and locals watched from the pumps, frozen and quiet. They assumed she was just another pushy reporter. They were wrong. If you're hearing this, hit follow and tell me what city you're listening from. This is how one woman cracked a 2-decade racket. No shootouts, no cavalry, just paper trails, timestamps, and the kind of evidence that ruins careers. Rio Verde, Texas, border town, 32,000 people, and 1,000 unspoken rules. Mara Kingsley eased her rental sedan into a chevron off Route 90 at 2:14 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. March in West Texas, dry wind, dust in your teeth, heat that feels personal. Mara finished the pump and replaced the nozzle when a patrol unit slid behind her. Lights on, siren off, silent intimidation. Deputy Rafael Montes stepped out. About 37, mirrored aviators, posture built from years of never being challenged. "License and registration." No greeting, no reason. Mara kept both hands visible, calm. "Of course, officer. What's this about?" He didn't blink. "Brake lights out." She glanced at her reflection in the rear glass. Lights looked fine. She checked that morning. Paranoia wasn't a habit, it was survival. Montes' jaw tightened. "You calling me a liar?" "Not at all," Mara said, steady as a metronome. "Happy to verify with you." "Stay in the vehicle!" He walked off with her documents. Minutes crawled. 10, 20, 40. Mara sat at 10 and 2, watching him talk into a radio, watching him watch her. The station clerk disappeared inside. Customers kept distance like fear was contagious. When Montes returned, 2 more units rolled in behind him. Then the black F-250 arrived, light bar, star emblem, authority baked into paint. Sheriff Red stepped out like he owned gravity. He did in Rio Verde. Red's silver hair was clipped short, military neat. His badge sat slightly crooked on his chest, deliberate, a reminder he didn't need rules to look correct. A small crowd formed, truckers, a family, a man with a cup of soda staring too hard. Red took Mara's documents without even glancing down. He studied her through the open window. "Step out, ma'am." Mara complied slowly, palms open. "Deputy says you've been hostile." "I've been cooperative," she replied. "I've been waiting." Red smiled, empty eyes. 40 minutes of patience. Makes me wonder what you're so calm about." He nodded. "Pop the trunk." "Sheriff, do you have probable cause?" "I said the trunk." Montes opened it. Camera bag, batteries, lenses, a slim notebook. Red lifted it, flipped pages, and read aloud like it was a sermon. "Local officers collect fees from Latino shop owners, 500 to 5 grand monthly." And he looked up, pleased with himself. "What's this?" "My notes," Mara said. "I'm a freelance writer, protected work product." Red turned the notebook over and handed it to a deputy. "Hear that, boys? We got a writer." He drew the word out like it tasted bad. "From where? New York? L.A.? "Austin," she said. "Just asking questions." "Questions," Red echoed, smiling wider. Mara reached for her phone. I'm going to document this stop. His hand snapped out, snatching it before she could raise it. He held it up for the crowd. You want documentation? His arm swung down, hard. The phone struck concrete. Again! Again! Glass bloomed into shards. The crowd murmured. One woman's hand flew to her mouth, then went silent. Nobody moved. Mara's pulse hammered, but her voice stayed level. That's destruction of property. I'll need your badge number for my complaint. Red laughed, sharp and ugly. You can file it from a cell, he nodded. Cuff her. On what charge? Mara asked. Assaulting an officer, Red said smoothly. You tried to strike Deputy Montes. Mara stared. I didn't touch him. Red pointed around like he was counting votes. I saw it. He saw it. Deputy Harlan saw it. 3 sworn statements against one calm voice. Montes snapped cuffs on metal bit. Mara didn't fight. That was the point. She let them push her toward the cruiser. Let them show the town what happens to outsiders. She caught a teenager filming from behind a soda display. An older man shook his head without meeting her eyes. A woman with kids blinked fast, tears threatening, hands clenched in her hoodie. The dashboard clock read 14:32 as the door slammed. Mara memorized it like scripture. Outside, the crowd dispersed in practiced motion. Scatter, don't be noticed, don't be next. The teenager with the phone got intercepted by Deputy Harlan. Mara watched Harlan's hand close over the device. The recording, she knew, would vanish. Fear in Rio Verde wasn't loud. It was routine, like locking doors before dusk. Mara flexed her wrists. Standard cuffs, double-locked. Her skin already burned where metal rubbed. The back seat smelled of stale coffee and sweat. No interior camera. The dash cam lens wore a strip of tape like a blindfold. Of course it did. Rio Verde wasn't a town with some corruption. It was a town where corruption was governance, where law enforcement didn't serve the community. They managed it. Mara sat upright, breathing evenly, keeping her face blank. She needed them comfortable. She needed them talking. She'd spent 18 months building this case, and now she was inside their house. The cruiser rolled out. Montes looked at her in the mirror, voice oddly gentle. You should have left town. Mara's eyes stayed on his reflection. How many others? He didn't answer. The road hummed beneath tires. Mara pictured her rental at the pump. Trunk open, gear scattered, her shattered phone catching sunlight like a warning flare. They didn't know about the backup phone hidden under her insole. They didn't know about the micro recorder clipped along her BRA strap, disguised as hardware. They didn't know every word at the gas station had been routed live to a secure federal archive. 14:32, Tuesday, March 12th. The moment the clock started running out on Sheriff Red, Rio Verde, police sat in a squat brick building on South Main, more bunker than station. Small windows, heavy doors, designed to keep people in. Montes pulled into the back lot, away from traffic, away from witnesses. Inside, buzzing fluorescence, sickly yellow-green light, disinfectant trying to mask mildew and old sweat. Mara inhaled and tasted decay. They walked her past an empty front desk down a narrow hall. Beige walls with water stains. Linoleum floors curled at the edges. Photos of past sheriffs lined one side like a dynasty. Red's portrait dominated the center, larger than the rest like a monument. 24 years in office. 24 years to perfect a machine. The interrogation room held a metal table, 2 chairs, concrete walls. A camera mount in the corner. Empty bracket, no camera. Another blind spot. Mara noted everything. Montes pushed her into the chair. "Sit," she did. The metal was cold through denim, a different cruelty than the asphalt. "I need a phone call." Montes shrugged. "Systems down." He didn't bother making it believable. "Might be back in hours, might not." The door shut with a final click. Alone, cuffs tight, Mara scanned for listening devices. No two-way mirror. Too obvious. But a vent held a small dark circle, lens or mic. She shifted, testing the cuffs. She could slip them, trained, capable, but not yet. She waited, counting breaths. Let them believe she was trapped. Let them get sloppy. 18 months undercover as a content writer chasing human interest border stories, collecting invoices, names, photos, recordings, receipts. The fluorescent buzz became a soundtrack. Somewhere down the hall, a door slammed. Footsteps passed. Then silence returned like a held breath. 90 minutes later, the door opened. Sheriff Red entered with a manila folder and tossed it on the table. It slapped concrete loud. He didn't sit, just leaned forward like the room belonged to him. "You know what this is?" Mara said nothing. He flipped it open, reading, "Mara Kingsley, 32, Austin address. No employer listed. History of activism," he continued, savoring the word. "Protest arrest, disorderly conduct." Mara's eyes narrowed. "That's fabricated." "Is it?" Red leaned closer, aftershave sharp. "Or you're the kind of woman who thinks that rules don't apply." Mara swallowed anger. "I want my attorney." "Phones are still down," he smiled. "You're in my house now." He finally sat, relaxed, like they were sharing coffee. "I've handled 7 women like you," he said conversationally. "Writers, do-gooders, investigators. They come sniffing around thinking they'll save people." Mara kept her face blank. Red tapped the folder. "They all leave once they understand nobody here will back them. Nobody here wants trouble." "Here's what happens next," Red said. "You sign a statement admitting you filed a false report, and you get out of Texas." He paused, letting the threat hang. Mara met his gaze. "Or what?" Red opened the folder, wider, and turned it for her to see. Booking photos. Not her, but close enough. Arrest records from Dallas, Houston, Amarillo. All clean, all fake. "June 2022, disorderly conduct at a Capitol protest," he read. "September, trespass. January 2023, assault." He looked up. "Want more?" Mara's voice stayed even. "Run my prints. Check federal databases." Red chuckled. "You watch too much TV. We submit requests. Takes weeks, maybe a month. Meanwhile, you sit in county. No bail." Mara forced slow breathing. "Illegal detention." Red's smile sharpened. "What I know is you've been driving around my town asking about me." Mara didn't flinch. "Reporting facts isn't accusing." "Facts," he scoffed. "Fact is, I've kept this place safe. Kept cartel mess south. You know how? By keeping outsiders from teaching me my job." He stood, collecting the folder. "Sign and leave. Or spend 72 hours in a closet cell with broken air in a 100-degree building. Then we talk charges." At the door he paused. "FBI, Rangers. Whatever fairy tale you think saves you doesn't matter here. Only I matter." The door slammed. Hours later, they moved her to a holding cell. 8 by 8, steel bench, toilet without a seat, no window. Heat pressed down like a lid. 95, maybe more. Her wrists were raw. No water, no food. Intimidation, textbook. Mara sat, assessed, and decided. Not because she was scared, because the next step required timing. At hour 7, Deputy Montes checked the slot. "You alive in there?" Mara stood slowly. "I need to speak with Sheriff Red." Montes looked surprised. "Ready to sign?" Mara shook her head. "Ready to clarify who I am." 15 minutes later, Red appeared, arms crossed, smirk intact. "You wanted my attention?" Mara bent down, removed her left shoe, and peeled back the insole. She produced a thin credential wallet, designed for concealment, and held it up. "Special Agent Mara Kingsley, FBI, San Antonio Field Office, badge number 784. Her tone was precise, professional. "You are currently violating federal statute by assaulting a federal officer." For half a heartbeat, uncertainty flickered across Red's face. Then he laughed full, cruel amusement. "Montes!" he barked. "Get in here! You gotta see this!" Montes appeared, 2 deputies stacking behind him. Red took the badge, held it to the light like counterfeit currency. "FBI," he said, turning it over. "Looks fancy." "Sure you didn't order it online, Price?" he asked, and the deputies snorted. One pulled out a phone to record. "Say it again," he urged. Mara kept steady. "Call Assistant Special Agent in Charge Darius Okoye. Provide authentication code. Tango 77 Whiskey. He will confirm." Red repeated it mockingly, savoring each syllable like he was chewing glass. Montes's smile faltered as he examined the credential. "Sheriff, it does look." Red yanked it back. "Here's what I'll do," he said loudly. "I'll call the actual FBI and ask if they have an agent named Mara Kingsley running around my county." Mara's stomach tightened. Undercover protocol. No confirmation through public channels. Not without the right handshake. Red put his phone on speaker and dialed. "Yeah, hi. Sheriff Clayton Red, Rio Verde Police. Need to verify if you have an agent named Mara Kingsley assigned here?" A pause. A woman's professional voice. "I'm sorry, Sheriff. I don't have a record of that name in our current directory." Red's grin went triumphant. "That's all I needed." He held up the badge like a trophy. "Fake!" Latter followed, rehearsed. The next morning they released Mara with a warning: 24 hours to leave town. Mara didn't leave. That evening she walked into the Rio Verde Council meeting, public forum, open to residents. Texas law required it. They couldn't bar her without exposing themselves. The chambers held 60 seats. Half were filled. Shop owners, retirees, a few families. Heads turned as Mara entered. Word traveled fast when fear was the messenger. At the front table sat 5 council members. Mayor Elena Barrios, 62, silver hair tight in a bun, watched over reading glasses like a judge. Sheriff Red sat front row, unofficial but central. He spotted Mara, smiled, and waved 2 fingers like they were friends. The agenda crawled: budget numbers, permits, zoning. Mara waited. Finally, Mayor Barrios announced public comment. Mara rose and walked to the mic. The room quieted, the way a room quiets before lightning. "State your name," Barrios said coolly. "Mara Kingsley. I'm reporting illegal detention and destruction of property by Rio Verde Police." Murmurs rippled. Barrios removed her glasses, folded them carefully. "Miss Kingsley, you were detained on assault allegations. If you have a complaint, file it through appropriate channels." Mara's jaw tightened. "This is a channel. I'm a journalist." "You were arrested lawfully," Barrios cut in. "We reviewed the report. Deputies witnessed aggression. Appeal in county court." "I have evidence." "What evidence?" Barrios' voice was velvet over steel. "The phone you claim was destroyed? No record. The equipment you claim was seized, returned undamaged. Mara held up her replacement phone. I can provide sworn testimony. Barrios smiled thinly. This is not a trial. We don't take testimony here. Councilman Reyes nodded like a puppet on a string. If you believe a crime occurred, file a police report. Mara stared. With the department that detained me? Another council member spoke without looking up. You were processed and released within 24 hours. Standard procedure. In the audience, eyes dropped to laps. Silence became a wall. Mara scanned faces and recognized a woman from the gas station, Latina. Tearful then, rigid now. Hands clasped, lips pressed shut. Mara's voice softened. Other journalists have tried to report here. What happened to them? Mayor Barrios answered simply, they left, just as you should. Sheriff Red stood and turned toward Mara, enjoying the stage. What the mayor's saying, he announced, loud enough for the room, is we don't appreciate outsiders slandering us, especially fake federal agents. A few nervous laughs popped. Barrios lifted her gavel. This is your final warning. Leave Rio Verde. There's nothing for you here. The gavel struck once, sharp, final, and the meeting adjourned like a sentence. Council members gathered papers. Red ambled toward the exit, patting an elderly man's shoulder like he was a benevolent uncle. Mara lingered at the mic, then turned and walked out under whispering eyes. Near the doorway hung a banner. Rio Verde, 20 years of safe community. Mara snapped a photo. Evidence wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was branding. The local paper had folded years earlier. Its building on East Marigold stood boarded up, for lease, sun-faded. Behind it, Mara found a mechanic working under a truck hood. Javier Solis, 41, broad shoulders, forearms stained with grease, didn't look up at first. Not taking new jobs today, he said flatly. I'm not here for repair, Mara replied. I'm Mara Kingsley. Javier's hand paused mid-wrench. Yeah, he muttered. I know. Everybody knows. You're the woman they dragged. Mara stepped closer. You used to wear a badge. Rio Verde PD, 2020 to 2024. Fired for insubordination. Javier, slam the hood! Who told you that? Public records, his eyes flashed. Then you should know what happens to people who ask. What orders did you refuse? Mara asked. Javier snorted, bitter. Lady, you need to walk away. Mara didn't. I'm trying to stop. I know what you're trying to do, he snapped, throwing a wrench into a toolbox with a clang. You think you're the first? There were 7 before you. Journalists, activists, you know where they are? Gone. Smart enough. I'm not going anywhere, Mara said. Javier shook his head, climbing into his truck. Then you're stupid. Mara lifted her real credential, kept separate from what Red had mocked, and held it up. Javier stared through the windshield, expression unreadable, then drove off. 20 minutes later, his truck returned. He sat behind the wheel a long time before stepping out. Let me see it again, he said quietly. Mara handed it over. He inspected the seal, the texture, the hologram. His posture softened like a knot loosening. You're really federal. Yes, Javier exhaled. And you've been here 18 months pretending to be a writer. Mara nodded, building a case. Javier stared down the road. Okay, I'll talk. Not here. They drove separately to a rest stop 15 miles outside town. Picnic tables, vending machines, empty sky. Javier bought a soda and drank half before speaking. The system's simple, he said, voice low. They stop migrants, anyone who looks undocumented, threaten deportation unless they pay, $5 grand a head, Mara recorded audio, phone face down, mic open. If they can't pay, Mara asked. Javier's jaw flexed. They work it off. Ranches, construction, cleaning, no wages, debt labor. Mara's pen scratched notes. Where does the money go? Offshore, he said, blunt. Cayman. Red keeps a ledger, paper, names, amounts, dates. Mara's pulse kicked. Where's the ledger? Javier swallowed. Safe in his office. Who has access? Mara asked. Javier's eyes lifted, uneasy. 2 keys. Red and Mayor Barrios. Mara held still. You've seen it. Javier crushed the can slowly. Metal, whining. Once, before I knew what it was. Then I started asking questions. 3 weeks later, I was insubordinate. Mara leaned in. Will you testify? Javier shook his head hard. They'll kill me. Not if you're in federal protection, Mara said. Witness security. New identity. Javier cut her off, voice cracking. I have a wife, 2 kids. You want me to burn their whole life? Mara's gaze didn't waver. I'm asking you to stop this before there's another victim. Silence stretched. Wind rattled a trash can. Javier stared at the horizon like it held answers. Give me time, he finally said. Mara nodded once. Before you go, understand this. Everything I record is backed up live. She opened her jacket and showed the tiny mic disguised as a button. 18 months of audio. If they break my gear, the files already exist. Javier frowned. They took your phone, your cameras. Mara's mouth twitched. They took what I let them see. She produced a small recorder shaped like a lipstick tube. Voice-activated backup. Then she tapped a sketch on her phone. A rough floor plan. The bag they confiscated has another mic sewn into the lining. It's in their evidence room, about 10 meters from Mayor Barrios's office. Those walls are thin. If Red talks business in there, I'll hear it. Javier blinked, processing, then gave a reluctant nod. That's actually smart. Mara closed her jacket. It's how you survive in a town like this. Javier's voice softened. I'll think about the ledger. This time the words carried weight, not dismissal. Mara watched him drive away and felt the first real shift in the case, like a door unlocking somewhere deep inside the machine. That night, Mara parked 3 blocks from Town Hall. Dark street, clear line of sight. The meeting ended at 7. Now most windows were black. One remained lit on the 2nd floor, Mayor Barrios's office. Mara placed an earpiece, tuned into the remote feed from the mic in her seized bag. The signal was weak but alive. Static, then faint movement. Footsteps, a door creak, voices approaching. Mara boosted the gain, pen ready, timestamps on a legal pad. Shadows moved behind the blinds. 2 figures. She pressed record on her backup device anyway. Belt and suspenders. The primary stream was already routing to secure servers, but Mara trusted redundancy the way others trusted prayer. "Oh, talk," she whispered. "Just talk." Through the wall and ventilation, Sheriff Red's voice leaked into her ear. "We need to talk about the Kingsley woman." Mayor Barrios answered, crisp. "You're sure she's gone by tomorrow?" Red chuckled. "They always leave." Paper rustled. Mara wrote hard, hand cramping. The mic wasn't inside the office, but it didn't have to be. Old buildings carried secrets. Barrios' tone sharpened. "Does she have anything real?" Red sounded smug. "Notes. A busted phone. We seized the gear. It's in evidence. She's got nothing." Barrios exhaled. "Good. We can't afford another 2021 situation." Red scoffed. "That Houston guy? He ran." Mara froze for a beat. "Another incident? Another name?" Another thread? Red continued, voice lowering like a man discussing groceries. Next group arrives Tuesday. 15 people. Nant. Barrios did quick math aloud. 75 grand split two ways. 37, 5E each. Red. Deposit Wednesday night. Same Cayman account. Mara's stomach flipped. Direct confession, extortion, money laundering, conspiracy, and it was all time-stamped, captured, streaming. Make sure Montes stays quiet, Barrios added. After that gas station scene, we don't need eyes. Red. My guys are solid. Barrios. They'd better be. We built this 20 years. Red laughed softly. No outsider with a notebook ruins this. Mara kept writing until her fingers ached, because this was the sound of an empire admitting it existed. At midnight, Mara used her encrypted line to call her supervisor, ACC Darius Okoye. He answered quickly. Kingsley status. Sir, I have them on tape, she said. Red and Mayor Barrios. They discussed extortion totals, offshore deposits, Cayman routing. A pause. Then Okoye's voice tightened with satisfaction. That's what we needed. Excellent. I also have a potential witness, Mara continued, former Deputy Javier Solis. He's seen the ledger. He knows where it's kept. Okoye cut in, sudden and hard. Abort! Extract immediately! Mara stiffened. Sir, I'm close to the ledger. You've been compromised, Okoye said. Too dangerous. We'll build from what we have. With respect, Mara said carefully, the ledger makes it airtight. Okoye's tone went colder. That's in order. 48 hours. Something in his voice felt off, too quick, too eager to shut the door right when it was opening. Understood, Mara replied, because she had to. But understanding wasn't the same as obeying. She ended the call and stared at the dark outline of Town Hall. Instinct screamed. 3 hours later, at 3:47 a.m., her phone buzzed, a text from Javier. They know. Red called me. Asked about you. Get out! Mara's blood went cold. She called immediately. Javier answered in a whisper. Panic threaded through every syllable. How did he know? Mara asked. Nobody saw us. Javier's breathing came fast. He knew the timing. Said he knew where we met. Said, if I talk again, my family's done. Nice Andes. Mara's mind raced. Only one place she'd mentioned Javier, her midnight report to Okoye. 3.5 hours later, Red threatened Javier. That wasn't coincidence. That was leakage. Mara opened her encrypted email, logged into internal systems with emergency credentials, and pulled her recent briefings. Her stomach dropped. Okoye had forwarded her last 3 reports, not up the chain, but to District Attorney Paul Hendricks. Subject lines like FYI and awareness. Then Hendricks had CC'd someone with a Rio Verde PD address. Initials only. CR. Clayton Redden. The betrayal wasn't local. It was threaded. Mara scrolled further, hands shaking. 6 months of intelligence, witness notes, surveillance logs, audio summaries had been funneled outward like water through a cracked pipe. She clicked Hendricks's profile. Born in Rio Verde, graduated Rio Verde High, former assistant DA. And then she found the connection that made her nauseous. Hendricks's bio listed community affiliations, church board, public safety council, and a family name that kept recurring beside Mayor Barrios in archived charity photos. Mara felt her throat tighten. This wasn't a single crooked sheriff. It was a network, city hall, prosecutor's office, and now her own chain of command. Her investigation wasn't just in danger. It was surrounded. Mara forced a slow breath, then another, keeping panic from turning into noise. Noise got you killed. She reopened the forwarded chain and stared at the timestamps. Minutes between messages, like a relay race. Okoye to Hendricks. Hendricks to CR. She thought of Javier's trembling voice, of the ledger locked behind a sheriff's desk, of Tuesday's next group arriving. She realized with a clarity that felt like ice. The extraction order wasn't about safety. It was about stopping her from touching the one piece of evidence the network couldn't spin. The ledger, the receipts, the paper trail tying names to money. Mara's jaw set. If she left now, they'd bury everything. If she stayed, she might not leave alive. Outside, night pressed against her windshield. The town slept like a predator, pretending innocence. Mara pulled up her field notes and marked a new plan, one that assumed the people above her might be compromised. She minimized digital footprints, disabled non-essential comms, and moved her live backups to a secondary secure endpoint. If someone pulled the plug on her, the data would still survive. Her phone buzzed again. No message this time, just the hollow dread of expectation. Mara pictured Javier's kids unaware. She pictured the migrants scheduled to arrive Tuesday, counted as profit, $75,000 spoken like a grocery total. She whispered to herself, not a prayer, a promise. Not one more. Then she began building a path to the ledger without anyone's permission. First, isolate the leak. Second, protect the witness. Third, get proof that survived the network. Mara reviewed the town hall layout, the evidence room proximity, the after-hours patterns. She knew Red's habits, late-night office visits, private meetings, security blind spots. She also knew her own limit, time. Because once they realized she knew about the leak, they wouldn't threaten anymore. Mara drafted an emergency packet for a federal integrity unit, names, dates, audio hashes, and the Cayman details, then staged it for automatic release if her device went dark. She didn't send it yet. Sending was a flare, but the failsafe mattered. If she disappeared, the story would still move. That was the whole point of receipts. They traveled without you. She replayed the town hall recording in her ear, Red's casual certainty, Barrios' crisp arithmetic. Mara's hand stopped shaking and became steady. Anger had finally burned through fear. She thought of the gas station crowd, watching silently, not because they didn't care, because they'd been trained not to. If she could break the machine, maybe the town could learn another habit. At 4:12 a.m., Mara drove without headlights for 2 blocks, parked under a mesquite tree, and waited for sunrise like it was a starting gun. She rehearsed her next conversation with Javier. No more meetings in open spaces, no more texts, no more predictable routes. She would offer him a safe handoff, not promises. Promises were easy. Logistics saved lives. She watched the sky lighten and made herself drink water, one measured swallow at a time. Her wrists still ached from cuffs, a souvenir from the town's welcome committee. She touched the hidden mic on her collar and confirmed the transmitter was alive. 18 months of patience had led here. Now it would require something harder, speed without panic. Mara drove to a payphone outside a closed laundromat, obsolete, forgotten, perfect. She dialed a number she hadn't used in months, a federal public corruption hotline that bypassed her regional chain. A man answered, clipped and wary. Mara spoke in coded brevity. Active extortion operation. Local prosecutor involved. Supervisor possibly compromised. I have audio and routing info. The line went silent long enough to feel like rejection. Then the man said, "Send hashes in a single sample, nothing else." Mara agreed and hung up, pulse steady. She wasn't burning the whole deck, just lighting one corner enough for the right eyes to see smoke. It was a gamble. But staying inside a leaking system was a slower death. Mara drafted a stripped-down package. One audio clip of Red and Barrios discussing Tuesday's group. One Cayman routing reference. One chain showing Hendrix's forwarding pattern. No names beyond what was necessary. She attached cryptographic hashes for verification. Then she hesitated. Once sent, there was no unsending. Her thumb hovered. She thought of Javier's whisper, "They know." She hit send. A tiny action with a massive shadow. Then she turned her phone off and pulled the battery pack, severing signals. If Red had eyes inside federal systems, he wouldn't get a real-time map of her decisions. Mara placed the dead phone in a foil-lined pouch and exhaled. The next steps would be analog. Feet, paper, timing. She drove toward the edge of town and stopped near a cattle gate overlooking scrubland. Javier's truck appeared 10 minutes later, far enough away that neither looked like they were meeting. Mara walked first, hands visible, no sudden movements. Javier approached like a man stepping onto thin ice. "You shouldn't have called me," he hissed. Mara kept her voice low. "I didn't. They did." "Red knows you met me," Javier said, eyes darting. "He knows everything." Mara nodded. "Because someone inside the system is feeding him." Javier's face tightened. "Then we're dead." Mara shook her head once. "Not if we move smart." "I'm not asking you to testify today. I'm asking you to help me get the ledger photographed, just enough to prove it exists and ties names to payments." Javier swallowed hard. "And then what?" "Then you and your family disappear," Mara said. "Not later. Not soon. Immediately." Javier's hands trembled, then clenched. "He'll come for us." Mara's stare was unwavering. "He already is." Javier looked away, jaw working. "The safe's in his office. 2 keys. He carries his. The mayor keeps hers in her purse." Mara filed the detail without reacting. "Do you know the combination?" Javier shook his head. "No, but I know the night Red drinks with the highway guys. He leaves his office unlocked for 5 minutes while he smokes out back." Mara nodded slowly. "About 5 minutes was a lifetime if you'd planned for it." "Tuesday," Javier added, voice tight. "They'll be busy with the group. That's your window." Mara's mind clicked through risk like a calculator. Tuesday was also the day victims arrived. Waiting meant letting it happen. Acting meant facing armed men and compromised allies. She looked at Javier. "Can you get your family out of town by Monday night?" Javier stared. "That's—" He didn't finish. Mara softened her tone just enough. "It's survival." Javier exhaled, defeated and determined at once. "I can try." Mara nodded. "Do it. No texts, no calls. If you need me, leave a note under the 3rd trash can at the rest stop." Javier blinked. "That's ridiculous." "It's safe," Mara said. "Ridiculous is safe." Javier's eyes searched hers. "And your boss?" Mara's mouth tightened. "He's not my boss anymore." Javier backed away, then turned and walked fast to his truck like he'd changed his mind and couldn't allow himself time to reconsider. Mara watched him go, feeling the weight of every choice. The sky was bright now. Town traffic started. The world moved like nothing was wrong. Mara climbed into her car, hands steady, and drove back toward Rio Verde, with a new mission. She stopped once, parked behind a grocery store, and reopened the forwarded email chain. Screenshots only, no live connection. She stared at Okoye's name beside the forward arrow, then at Hendricks beside another. She didn't feel betrayal like sadness. She felt it like a target snapping into focus. If the network extended inside federal lines, then the ledger wasn't just evidence. It was insulation. Mara returned to her rental and pulled a plain envelope from the trunk. Cash, burner keys, a spare ID, and a tiny camera no bigger than a car fob. She checked each item, then placed the fob camera into her palm, testing its click. Tuesday was coming. People would arrive and be counted as dollars. Mara's stomach tightened, then hardened into resolve. She drove past Town Hall slowly, eyes on windows, memorizing angles. A maintenance worker smoked beside the side door, half asleep in the sun. Mara noted the camera placement above the entrance, one blind spot where a hanging banner blocked view. She noted the schedule posted for public works. She noted the sheriff's truck parked out back, as if daring anyone to notice. Back in her room, Mara spread maps and notes across the bed and created a timeline, minute by minute, like a heist plan built from bureaucratic routine. She marked Red's smoking breaks, Barrios's meeting habits, evidence room traffic. She also marked the leak, Okoye to Hendricks to Red. That arrow was a blade pointed inward. She needed to cut it before it cut her. Mara opened Hendricks's public bio again, then searched archived civic announcements. She found the thing that made her skin crawl. Hendricks wasn't just from Rio Verde. He was connected, godfather to Barrios's grandson, fundraiser chair for Red's last campaign, photographed shaking hands with Okoye at a community safety gala 2 years earlier. The corruption wasn't hidden. It was celebrated. Mara sat very still, hearing the earlier recording in her head. Same came in account, and realizing the true scope. A border town racket protected by the prosecutor, echoed by a federal supervisor, and enforced by a sheriff who believed he was untouchable. The empire didn't stop at the city limits. It ran through offices with seals on the doors. And now, Mara knew exactly where it bled. The family thread snapped into place like a trap. DePaul Hendricks wasn't just friendly with Mayor Elena Barrios. His mother had been Elena's older cousin, practically raised in the same house. Mara dug deeper and found campaign money tied to Okoye's name. Community donations routed through Caribbean shellfronts. Same offshore lattice sheriff Clayton Red used. Mara leaned back in her driver's seat, staring at the stained motel ceiling as if it might confess. She treated Rio Verde like a local infestation. It wasn't. It was a network with roots in redundancy, prosecutor, mayor, sheriff, and now possibly her own supervisor. For the first time in months, she felt truly alone. Evidence wasn't the problem. Distribution was. If she pushed anything through official lanes, Red would hear about it before a warrant was typed. Mara scrolled to a new contact. No badge, no agency, no chain of command. A journalist. Plan B. The phone rang 4 times. A raspy voice answered, irritated. "It's 4 a.m. "My name is Mara Kingsley," she said, keeping her voice flat and controlled. I'm federal. I have 18 months of audio and documents proving systematic extortion in a Texas border town. My chain is compromised. I need someone who doesn't scare easy. A pause, a breath. Then, "Okay, talk. Where can we meet?" They chose a diner 40 miles outside Rio Verde, far enough for clean air, close enough to arrive before sunrise. The journalist was already there when Mara slid into the booth. Nina Sharp, 44, wire-frame glasses, sharp eyes, and a weathered leather bag that looked like it had lived in war zones. She didn't waste words. "Show me!" Mara played a short clip. Red and Barrios, casual as accountants discussing Tuesday's arrivals and Cayman deposits. Nina's face didn't change, but her posture did. She leaned in like a door unlocking. "How much do you have?" Mara answered without blinking. "Over 100 files, victim statements, banking trails, and a handwritten ledger locked in Red's safe." Mara explained the leak. Okoye's FYI forwards to Hendricks, and Hendricks quiet relays to Red. Nina removed her glasses, wiped them slowly like she was buying time to think. "You want me to publish?" "Not yet," Mara said. "I want a live press event. Public, recorded, shared, so nobody can bury it. I'll go on camera." "When?" Nina asked. Mara had already chosen the date like it was a lifeline. Friday, 10 a.m., Austin. Nina studied her for a long beat. "They'll come for your badge, your sanity, your credibility." Mara's jaw tightened. "They already started, but they can't strangle the truth if the truth is everywhere." Nina extended her hand. "I'm in." The next hour was logistics and adrenaline. Nina woke an editor, called a venue manager, pulled favors from colleagues who owed her. 2 a.m., it was confirmed. Friday, March 15th, 10 a.m., a downtown Austin media hall. Capacity, 50 press seats plus camera space. "We'll stream on 3 platforms," Nina said. "If one drops, 2 keep breathing." Mara added one more layer. "We need documents authenticated, not a friendly notary. Someone with gravity." Nina didn't hesitate. "Judge Lenora Delgado," she said. 73, retired federal bench, hates crooked cops with a personal, righteous fire. Mara nodded. "She'll validate the bank prints and sworn statements on camera. That changes the math." Nina's fingers flew across her laptop. "I know her," she said, voice darkly confident. "Her grandson died during a bad stop years ago. She doesn't forgive, and she doesn't scare." Mara felt something loosen in her chest. Never hope, not fully, but a thin thread of possibility. Then Nina's eyes narrowed. "One problem. You still need that ledger." "Without it," Nina said, "they'll claim the audio is edited and the banks are fabricated. But a ledger in Red's handwriting, names, dates, totals, that's a nail through the story." Mara stared at her coffee like it might become a plan. "I know," she said. "Can I get it? I'm going to try." Nina's voice went blunt. "That's not a plan." Mara replied, "It's the only one I've got." Mara left the diner with 4 days on the clock. Wednesday morning, she drove to Javier Solis's mechanic lot on the edge of town, only to find glass glittering like ice across the asphalt. The front window was shattered. Tools were flung everywhere. A hydraulic lift lay tipped like a dead animal. Red spray paint screamed across the wall. Talkers, "Get buried!" Javier sat on the curb, head in his hands. His wife stood beside him, holding their kids tight. The little boy sobbed into her jacket. Mara approached slowly, palms open like she was walking into a minefield. Javier didn't look up. "Don't," he said. "Don't come near us." Mara's throat tightened. "Javier, I'm sorry. I can get protection." "Protection?" Javier finally looked up. One eye was swollen nearly shut, face purple with bruises. "Where was your protection when 3 men kicked in my door? When they shoved a gun at my kid's face?" Mara felt the words land like a fist. "They knew names," Javier whispered. "Schedules. Schools. They didn't threaten me. They threatened my family." His wife cried without sound, tears running straight down. The little girl clung to her mother's leg, trembling. Mara's voice broke through her own shock. "A witness security. New identities? New city. We can—" Javier shook his head hard. "No. I'm not uprooting my kids forever. I'm not living in hiding for 20 years. His voice rose, then he swallowed it. "I'm done. I'm not testifying." "Friday's the event," Mara said. "If you speak, it saves people." Javier's face turned flat, defeated, and furious. "I'm not speaking," he repeated, each word heavier. "We're leaving San Antonio, Austin, anywhere Red doesn't own." Mara tried to hold his eyes. "He'll find you," Javier shrugged. "Maybe, but at least we'll have a chance." He gathered his family and walked away through wreckage like it was snow. Mara stood in the parking lot, surrounded by broken glass and scattered wrenches, feeling the cold truth. Her presence had drawn the storm. Her phone buzzed. "Nina. Press event confirmed. Do you have the witness?" Mara watched Javier's truck pull out. She texted back one word. "No." Wednesday night, sirens cut through the motel air. Mara stepped outside and saw smoke blooming over downtown. The Rio Verde Police Department was on fire. She drove close enough to see flames licking the rear wing, the evidence storage side. Fire trucks screamed in, and men in helmets moved like ants. Sheriff Red stood in the lot, arms crossed, watching like he was supervising a cleanup. He looked calm, too calm, like a man watching his own strategy work. Mara parked 2 blocks away, heart sinking as the realization sharpened. The mic sewn into her seized bag had been sitting in that evidence room. If it burned, the device was gone. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. "Agent Kingsley," a woman's voice said. "Deputy Chief Paige Moreno, Rio Verde Fire." "I'm calling as a courtesy," Moreno continued. "The fire appears to have originated near evidence storage. We believe you had property there from a prior incident." Mara swallowed. "Yes." "I'm sorry," Moreno said. "The room sustained major damage. Most items will be total losses." Mara stared at the burning building. "Cause?" "Initial indicators suggest electrical failure." "Electrical failure," Mara repeated, tasting the lie. Moreno's voice stayed polite, practiced. "The fire marshal will finalize findings." "Again, sorry." The call ended. Mara's jaw clenched. The bag was ash. The microphone was ash. But the recordings weren't. Every second had already streamed out to redundant storage. Red had destroyed a device, not the evidence. That almost made Mara laugh. Almost. She watched firefighters flood the smoke with water while Red shook hands with the chief, performing concern for cameras that weren't there. Her phone buzzed again. Text from an unrecognized number. "You have 24 hours to leave. If you're in Texas on Friday morning, consequences follow. Final warning. No signature. No need." Mara deleted the message and pocketed the phone. She wasn't leaving. Not now. Not after Javier's bruises. Not after smoke and lies. If they were texting threats, they were already moving beyond intimidation into planning. She returned to her car with careful movements, scanning reflections, counting exits. Tonight wasn't about bravery. Tonight was about surviving until tomorrow. She went back to the motel but didn't sleep. She sat in her car in the back corner of the lot, doors locked, backup device on the seat beside her. Every passing headlight made her spine tighten. Every engine sound felt like a door opening somewhere. She waited for dawn with her eyes open, the way people wait when they know a predator is hunting. Thursday morning, the local news ran the first smear. In the motel breakfast area, a cheerful anchor smiled into the camera and spoke poison like it was weather. District Attorney Paul Hendricks warns residents about a woman falsely claiming federal authority. Cut to Hendricks at a podium. Flag behind him, voice solemn. This individual has a history of instability and deception. The segment showed stills of Mara's face. Her name splashed like a wanted poster. Hendricks continued, "We believe she's impersonating an officer and harassing our public servants." Mara gripped her paper cup until it creaked. Every detail was calculated. Plant doubt now, so truth looks like hysteria later. She could already imagine the headline, "Unstable Woman Accuses Sheriff." It got worse. Hendricks hinted she'd been released from a federal training program, that she'd exhibited delusional behavior. Lies layered on lies, engineered to take weeks to disprove. Weeks she didn't have. Mara forced herself to breathe evenly. This wasn't just about legal risk. It was about public narrative. If the crowd didn't believe her, Red didn't need to kill her. He just needed to discredit. Her phone rang. Nina. "You seeing this?" Nina asked, voice clipped with anger. "I'm watching," Mara said. Nina exhaled. "My editor's legal team is spooked. They're worried about liability. They want proof you're legitimate before they attach our name to you." Mara's voice stayed flat. "We have proof." Nina said, "They want official verification, which your chain can block." "They're going to try to cancel the venue," Nina warned. "Insurance, legal threats, safety concerns." Mara closed her eyes, feeling the clock accelerate. "If they cancel," she said, "we stream anyway. No hall, no corporate shield, just US and the evidence." Nina went silent. Then, quietly, "That's career suicide for both of us." Mara replied, "Better than letting them win." Another pause. Nina inhaled. "Friday, 10 a.m., I'll send you a backup location that doesn't rely on contracts." Mara opened her eyes. "Good." Nina's voice sharpened. "And Mara, assume they'll come for you before Friday." Mara stared at the motel window, reflecting her own tired face. "I know," she said. "I already feel them moving." Thursday afternoon, Mara returned to her room and found the door slightly open. Not forced, not damaged. Opened cleanly with a key. Her hand went to her weapon instinctively. She swept the room. Bathroom, closet, behind curtains, empty. But everything was disturbed. Mattress shifted, drawers pulled, suitcase unzipped. A careful search by someone with time. Her spare laptop was missing, the one she'd wrapped and tucked under the sink. The good news, it was encrypted and configured to wipe after repeated failures. The bad news, the message was unmistakable. "We can enter your life whenever we want." Mara didn't waste time grieving. She packed what remained, eyes scanning corners, body moving like a drill. At the front desk, the manager couldn't meet her eyes. Confirmation without confession. Mara checked out, left no forwarding trail, and drove west toward Eagle Pass. New motel, cash payment, fake name. Car parked 2 blocks away, not in the lot. She sat on the scratchy bed and let herself ask the question she'd avoided for 18 months. Is this worth dying for? She pictured the victims, faces blurred by fear, voices trembling as they described paying to avoid deportation, paying to keep children safe. She pictured Tuesday's next group, spoken about like inventory. Mara's answer came without debate. Yes, it was worth it. She didn't want martyrdom, she wanted justice. But if the choice was silence or risk, she chose risk. At 11:47 p.m., an email arrived from a burner routed through layers of proxies. Subject: final notice. The body was clinical and cold. Leave Texas by midnight Friday, or you won't leave alive. It claimed to know her location, her plan, her schedule. No signature, no flourish. That's what made it terrifying. It sounded like logistics. Mara read it 3 times, not because she didn't understand, but because she wanted to feel exactly what it was doing to her body. Hands shaking, heart steady, but high. Not panic, preparation. She'd been threatened before. This felt different because it came with proof. Javier's beating, the fire, the motel entry. Escalation had a pattern. Murder was the next rung. She opened her remaining device and created a dead man protocol. If she didn't check in twice a day, her evidence packet would release to multiple journalists, a civil rights attorney, and the integrity hotline she'd used. She didn't romanticize it. It wasn't vengeance. It was leverage. Then she checked her weapon, counted rounds, and whispered the simplest goal: survive until 10. Outside, the motel sign buzzed and flickered like a warning light. Mara paced the room, rehearsing routes, selecting roads with traffic, planning stops with witnesses. The temptation to run, to disappear, to live another day was real. She crushed it with one thought: if I leave, they keep winning. She didn't need courage. She needed discipline. She drafted a short email to Nina, Judge Delgado, and 2 independent reporters she trusted. Subject: if I vanish. The body contained instructions, encryption keys stored separately, and a time-stamped index of the most damning clips. She scheduled it to auto-send if she missed her check-in. Then she shut down non-essential devices and slept in 20-minute bursts, fully dressed. Friday morning, 6:23 a.m., Mara left Eagle Pass early, 2 hours to Austin. Plenty of cushion if nothing went wrong. Sunrise bled orange across open desert. The road was empty enough to feel like a stage. Her phone rang. "Nina, where are you?" "90 miles out," Mara said. Nina's voice was tight with adrenaline. Judge Delgado confirmed. "Major outlets are sending crews." "This will be huge," Nina said, trying to sound confident. Mara started to answer, and then saw flashing red and blue in her mirror. Her stomach dropped. "Nina," Mara said quickly, "I've got lights behind me. I'll call back." She hung up, eyes scanning. A black pickup closed in, light bar blazing, sheriff's star on the door, red outside his jurisdiction, meaning this wasn't a stop. It was a snatch. Mara considered running, flooring it toward the nearest town, blasting the horn, drawing eyes. But another vehicle appeared ahead, easing into her lane. Then a third behind the pickup, boxed in, coordinated, professional. Mara pulled to the shoulder because the alternative was a crash that could be framed as an accident. She placed both hands on the wheel and waited, pulse loud in her ears. The lid truck door opened. Red stepped out wearing jeans and a work shirt. No uniform, no badge. That detail was a confession. He wasn't pretending this was lawful. 2 men emerged from the other cars, Deputy Montes and a stranger built like a boulder, eyes blank, hands loose near his waistband, hired muscle. Red walked slowly, smiling like it was already over. Mara's hand hovered near her weapon but didn't draw. Drawing would justify a shooting. Red yanked her door open. Rough hands dragged her out. Zip ties cinched her wrists in front, tight enough to numb fingers. A hood dropped over her head. Mara forced herself to count turns as they drove. But after the third hard swerve, she knew they were deliberately disorienting her. When the hood came off, she stood inside a warehouse with rusted sheet metal walls and broken high windows, spilling dusty light. Empty, quiet, perfect for making someone disappear. Red paced in front of her, Montes behind him, the hired man to the side with a gun half visible. Red's voice was almost gentle. "Last chance. Sign this statement and walk out." He held up paper, a confession that she was unstable, lying, impersonating authority. "You leave Texas," he said, "and you stop telling stories." Mara stared at him. "Go to hell." Red sighed like she disappointed him. "If you don't sign, you die. Single vehicle fire. Fell asleep. People love simple tragedies." He tilted his head. "You think anyone will care?" Mara didn't answer with words. She lifted her bound hands and tapped the plain black hair clip she'd been wearing since dawn. "Before you do anything," she said calmly, "look at that." Red frowned. "What?" "It's a beacon," Mara said. Low-power satellite ping, heart rate trigger. It activated when you boxed me in." Red's smile twitched. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Mara asked, voice steady. She looked at Montes, not Red. "Deputy, you want to die for him?" Montes's face tightened, conflict flickering. Red snapped, "She's lying." Mara continued, "If my biometrics spike, the signal flags an emergency. A clean office receives it. They don't ask permission. They don't negotiate. They respond." The hired man shifted, uneasy. Red tried to laugh, but it sounded thin. "Where's your phone then?" "Not a phone," Mara said. "It doesn't call. It only transmits." And it already did. She leaned slightly forward. "You grabbed me at 6:34 a.m. on Highway 277. I can tell you the mile marker because I watched it. That's kidnapping. Add federal charges to your pile." Red's eyes sharpened. "Cut it," he hissed at Montes. "Search her." Montes stepped closer, hands hovering, not touching, like he was afraid to become part of the act. Mara kept going, slow and conversational. "You drove southwest for about 20 minutes. We're in a new county now. Crossing county lines with a captive isn't just bold, it's stupid." The hired man licked his lips, eyes darting to exits. Red's voice rose. "There's no team coming." Mara listened and heard something faint, far away, like wind through metal. Then it sharpened into a thread. Sirens. Not close yet, but real. Montes's face drained. Red froze for a fraction too long. Mara smiled, small and lethal. "You should have made me sign fast," she said. "Now you're on the clock." The sirens grew louder, multiplying. Red's rage flashed hot. "Move!" he snapped, grabbing the Mara's arm. The hired man raised his gun. Mara didn't fight the grip. She raised her voice just enough to carry. "Federal agent kidnapped! Warehouse!" The words bounced off metal. The sirens surged like a wave. Montes backed one step, then another. Terror winning. Red snarled, "Shoot her!" The hired man hesitated, because mercenaries don't like guaranteed prison. The warehouse door shuddered as something heavy hit it. "FBI!" a voice thundered from outside. "Hands up!" Red's eyes widened. Montes dropped his gaze, shoulders collapsing. Mara held still, heart hammering, because movement at the wrong second gets you killed even when rescue arrives. The doors blew inward with a concussion of light and dust. Tactical agents poured in, rifles raised, moving like a practice storm. "Hands! Now!" The hired man threw his weapon down instantly. Smart. Montes went to his knees, shaking. Red reached toward his waistband. Pure instinct. Pure arrogance. A beanbag round slammed into his chest and folded him to the concrete. 30 seconds later, It was done. Red face down, cuffed, spitting curses into dust. Montes against the wall, cuffed, eyes wide and wet with fear. The hired man prone, palms splayed, breathing fast. An agent cut Mara's zip ties with a blade. Mara rubbed her wrists, forcing herself to stay upright. Adrenaline made her limbs feel unreal. A man in a windbreaker approached. Agent Caleb Vaughn, early 50s, calm eyes, voice steady. "Special Agent Kingsley," he said. "Houston Field Office." Mara blinked, trying to focus. "Houston?" Vaughn nodded. "Your beacon pinged at 6:34. Houston was the closest clean response." His gaze flicked to red. "We've been watching San Antonio's chain. Your evidence confirmed what we suspected." "So you knew I was compromised," Mara said, half accusation, half relief. Vaughn's mouth tightened. "We suspected, needed proof strong enough to justify bypassing the usual ladder." He looked toward his team. "We've got it now." Mara's throat tightened with anger that had nowhere to go. "I have a press event in Austin," she said. Vaughn nodded once. "Then we're getting you there." 10:07 a.m., they arrived at the backup site Nina had secured. It was a small independent studio above a coffee roastery, rented under a non-profit's name. It wasn't glamorous, but it had cameras, uplinks, and witnesses. Mara stood behind a curtain of cables and light stands, listening to the hum of livestream equipment. Through a crack, she saw reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, phones up, eyes hungry. Nina was at the mic, voice steady like she'd been born in conflict. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I'm Nina Sharp. What you're about to hear is the result of an 18-month federal investigation into extortion and laundering in Rio Verde, Texas." Murmurs rippled. "This evidence implicates local law enforcement, city leadership, and a sitting district attorney." The room tightened, breath held. Nina continued, "We have over 100 recordings, victim affidavits, and banking documentation tracing funds to offshore structures." She paused and looked toward the curtain. "And presenting this evidence today is the agent who gathered it, despite being arrested, threatened, smeared, and kidnapped this morning." The room erupted into shocked whispers. Nina lifted her chin. "Please welcome Special Agent Mara Kingsley." Mara stepped into the lights. Cameras pivoted. Live stream counters ticked upward fast, tens of thousands, then more. She moved to the podium and held up her credential long enough for every lens to focus. "My name is Mara Kingsley," she said, voice firm, no tremor. "I'm a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I've been operating undercover in Rio Verde for 18 months. This investigation," Mara said, "documents a systematic extortion operation targeting migrants and Latino business owners. We have recorded conversations discussing arrivals, payment totals, and offshore transfers. The operation centers on Sheriff Clayton Redd and Mayor Elena Barrios, with facilitation and cover from District Attorney Paul Hendricks." A hand shot up in the crowd. "How do you prove that?" Mara answered without blinking. "Because I recorded them. Because victims signed statements. Because banking trails matched their own words." She raised a small drive. "This contains indexed files, hashes, and corroborating documentation. Copies have been transmitted to oversight channels and multiple newsrooms." She let the words hang. "There is no putting this back in the dark." Nina stepped in. "Judge Lenora Delgado is here to authenticate documents on camera." Judge Delgado, 73, silver hair and iron posture, moved into frame like a verdict. She held up stamped validations and signed affidavits, explaining in plain language why the records were legitimate. The room's skepticism cracked. Authority, real authority, was finally on the right side. Nina nodded to a technician. Audio played. Red and Barrios, voice clear. Discussing Tuesday's 15, the 5,000 per person figure. The Cayman deposit. The room went dead quiet in the way it does when denial dies. Someone in the back whispered, "That's them!" Camera shutters clicked like rain. Mara watched faces shift from doubt to anger. Nina displayed bank documents on a screen. Transaction patterns, matching dates, routed through layered entities that all collapsed onto the same offshore backbone. Over the past 5 years, Nina said, these accounts received millions. Judge Delgado pointed to signatures and verification marks. These documents are authentic. For the first time, the smear campaign looked flimsy because evidence was speaking louder than rumors. A reporter shouted, "Do you have physical proof beyond audio and banks?" Mara's jaw tightened. "We are pursuing a handwritten ledger," she said carefully. "But we do have seizure warrants in motion." Vaughn, standing off camera, gave a subtle nod. Mara continued, "Today's disclosure triggers federal oversight and immediate action. You're watching the system being forced to respond." Nina lifted her phone and played a short clip captured during the rescue. Red cuffed on warehouse concrete, face twisted with disbelief. The room gasped. Nina didn't gloat. "Sheriff Clayton Red has been arrested," she said. "Charges include extortion, money laundering, kidnapping, and obstruction." The words landed heavy. A reporter asked, "What about the district attorney?" Mara answered, "Paul Hendricks is under federal investigation for conspiracy and obstruction. We have evidence of information flow from compromised channels to local actors." Another reporter shouted, "And your supervisor?" Mara's throat tightened. ASAC Darius Okoye has been placed under internal review pending findings. This investigation suggests corruption may have extended into higher offices. That's why we went public. The livestream chat exploded. Anger, disbelief, support, threats, prayers, demands for arrests. Outside the studio, police sirens wailed in the distance, and for once they weren't a tool of intimidation. They were movement. Reporters streamed out to file updates. Nina stayed anchored, controlling the room. "We will now release a searchable index of recordings," she said, "so the public can hear for themselves." In Rio Verde, news hit like a thunderclap. Footage arrived. Federal agents at town hall, staff watching wide-eyed. Mayor Elena Barrios walked out in cuffs, chin lifted, face rigid. The image wasn't cinematic. It was grim. Power doesn't collapse in explosions. It collapses in paperwork and metal restraints. And the town, trained to look away, finally looked straight on. A Texas Tribune reporter asked, "How many victims?" Mara replied, "We have 41 sworn statements verified so far, but we believe the number is far higher across 2 decades. Judge Delgado added, "Victims will be offered legal support and protection." Nina leaned forward, voice sharpened. "Immigration relief paths are being pursued. This isn't just prosecution. It's repair." Another question. "Will deputies cooperate?" Mara said, "Some have already requested counsel. One has approached investigators about cooperation." She didn't say Montes's name. She didn't need to. The machine was cracking, and everyone could hear it. Nina concluded the event with a promise. All materials will remain publicly accessible. If platforms remove one link, a dozen mirrors will replace it. In the days that followed, the story metastasized across national outlets. People who had been silent began sending messages. Names, dates, receipts, photos of traffic tickets that never made sense. The fear didn't vanish overnight, but it shifted. Fear stopped being private and became shared, and shared fear is the first step toward resistance. 3 months later, Rio Verde looked the same on a map, but it moved differently. People held eye contact. They spoke louder. They walked into offices without lowering their heads. The interim sheriff was Rosa Delgado Mendez, 45, born in Rio Verde, once extorted herself during a fabricated stop years prior. Now she wore the badge with a posture that said, "No more." Mara attended the swearing-in at Town Hall. Same cinder-block corridors, same thin walls, different air. Rosa's hand rested on a Bible, voice unwavering. "I swear to uphold the Constitution and serve this community with transparency and integrity." Applause filled the room, not polite, not forced, real, loud, cleansing. Mara stood in the back, arms folded, eyes stinging. The governor's appointed interim mayor spoke next, announcing reforms with a checklist tone that felt revolutionary in this town. Mandatory body cameras, independent review board, financial audits, complaint hotlines routed outside the county. It wasn't magic, it was structure, systems designed to prevent one man from becoming the law. The crowd cheered again, and this time nobody looked down. Agent Vaughn stood beside Mara, quiet as a shadow. "You did it," he murmured. Mara shook her head slightly. "We did it," she said. Vaughn's mouth tightened in approval. "Washington wants you," he added. "New task force, border region corruption. They want someone who knows what it feels like when the chain breaks." Mara stared at Rosa, shaking hands with residents. "I'll consider it." Outside, a mother lifted her toddler onto her shoulders so the kid could see the ceremony. The child waved a tiny flag like it meant something. Mara watched and felt the strange ache of aftermath, relief mixed with grief for what it had cost. Javier had vanished with his family under protection after the press event. He never testified publicly. He didn't have to. The evidence was enough. Weeks later, a compensation fund formed from seized assets, homes, vehicles, offshore money pulled back through legal clause. It wouldn't undo 20 years of terror, but it would build new roofs, pay lawyers, reopen businesses, restore oxygen. Mara watched numbers scroll on a news segment and felt a quiet satisfaction that wasn't joy, but something sturdier. Consequence. Interviews followed. Victims who once whispered now spoke into microphones with shaking hands and steady eyes. One man described paying $5,000 to keep his wife from being reported. A woman described being forced into unpaid work to settle a debt invented by a uniform. Each story was a stone added to a monument that could no longer be toppled by one sheriff's laughter. Nina kept the spotlight on systems, not saviors. "This wasn't one bad man," she told the camera. "It was a structure that rewarded cruelty." She credited the victims, the whistleblowers, the oversight teams that finally acted when the truth became public. Mara stayed mostly out of frame because she knew what hero narratives do. They let everyone pretend the problem ended with one arrest. In Rio Verde, a small restaurant opened on East Marigold. Bright paint, new signage, crowded tables. The owner, Marisol Vega, had been one of the people Mara noticed at the gas station months earlier. Eyes wet, mouth closed. Now she spoke on camera. "I thought nobody would believe us," she said. "I thought being quiet was the only way to survive. I was wrong." Marisol pointed to a framed photo on the wall. Mara at the livestream podium, badge visible, eyes tired but unbroken. Under it, a simple plaque. For the ones who spoke when we couldn't. Mara visited once, quietly, without announcement. The smell of tortillas and grilled meat filled the air. Laughter bounced off walls that used to hold only fear. Mara sat at the counter while Marisol slid a plate in front of her like an offering. "Eat," Marisol said. "You look like you've been running for a year." Mara tried to smile. 18 months, she corrected softly. Marisol's eyes shined. "Then sit still for 5 minutes." Mara chewed slowly, letting herself breathe. When Marisol came around the counter and hugged her, it wasn't hero worship. It was gratitude with teeth. Gratitude for not leaving, for not folding, for making the town's fear visible to the world. Mara hugged back carefully, aware of the cameras that weren't there, the danger that still lived in habits. "Thank you," Marisol whispered, "for staying." Mara shook her head. "You stayed," she said. "You survived. You built this." Marisol pulled back, hands on Mara's shoulders. "For years, I lived like a shadow," she said. "Now my daughter tells me she wants to work in justice. Not because she loves badges, because she hates what bad badges did." Mara swallowed hard, throat tight. The next morning, Mara drove out of town and stopped on the shoulder near the border, looking at scrubland and sky. She thought about justice. How ugly it is up close. How slow. How many doors stay locked until you kick the right one on camera? She didn't feel triumphant. She felt resolved, because Rio Verde wasn't unique. It was a template. That's the part people hate. The story doesn't end. You don't arrest one sheriff and fix a culture. You build audits, oversight, whistleblower routes. You protect witnesses like they're oxygen. You keep receipts like they're armor. Mara understood now why Red feared paper more than guns. Paper outlives threats. Paper doesn't flinch. Weeks later, Washington called again. The offer was real. Led a unit focused on border region corruption, with authority to bypass compromise chains. Mara sat in a quiet room, phone to her ear, and pictured the warehouse, the sirens, the live stream. "I'll do it," she said finally. Not because she wanted power, because she wanted fewer towns to learn fear as a language. Nina released follow-ups that tracked the trials, the plea deals, the financial recoveries. She never let the public look away. "Exposure is only step 1, she said on air. "Transformation is step 2, and it takes years." Mara respected that. The world loves a clean ending. Real life isn't clean. Real life needs stubborn people and redundant backups. Before leaving Texas, Mara returned once more to Marisol's place for lunch. No cameras, no fanfare, just a corner booth and warm food. As she stood to go, Marisol pressed a small envelope into her hand. Inside was a child's drawing, a woman holding a badge shaped like a star, standing between a family and a storm. Mara blinked hard. Driving toward the airport, Mara listened to the radio. A caller from Rio Verde spoke on air, voice shaking, but speaking. "We were scared," the caller said. "We thought nobody cared." Mara's hands tightened on the wheel. She didn't know the caller's name. She didn't need to. The sound of that voice was the whole point. Fear had finally met visibility and lost. If this story hits you in the gut, share it. Not because it's entertaining, but because towns like Rio Verde survive on isolation. They survive when victims think they're alone. They collapse when the truth becomes public property. And if you're watching from somewhere that feels owned by someone else's power, remember this: receipts are louder than threats. In the end, It wasn't a gun that broke the empire. It was a record. Timestamps, voices, transfers, names in ink. A system tried to erase a woman by calling her unstable, criminal, disposable. It failed because the evidence outlived the intimidation. And that's the lesson. Truth doesn't need permission. It needs exposure. Evil grows quietly if no one watches. If you're in your late 60s or 70s, you've seen how power can rotate from the inside while good people look away. In Rio Verde, a sheriff, a mayor, and a district attorney turned human lives into $5,000 fees year after year. No cavalry, no shootouts, just quiet abuse at a dusty gas station and on empty two-lane roads. The lesson? Corruption doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles, shakes your hand, and calls itself public safety. Paper trails are stronger than bullets. Mara didn't win with a gun. She won with receipts, timestamps, bank transfers, audio files that outlived lies and threats. Many of you remember keeping carbon copies, filing tax slips, saving letters. That habit of record-keeping is not old-fashioned. It's armor. In a world of smear campaigns and lost reports, proof on paper still speaks the loudest. Our legacy is the town we leave behind. For those with children and grandkids, the ending matters most. Rio Verde didn't become perfect, but it became braver. New sheriff, real oversight, victims finally heard. The lesson for our generation is simple. We may walk with slower steps now, but our voices can still change the streets our families walk tomorrow. Friends, after hearing Mara's story and these lessons about courage, corruption, and the power of evidence, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever seen something wrong in your town? A bad stop, an unfair fee, a leader misusing power, and wondered if speaking up would even matter? If you were in Mara's place or Javier's, what would you have done? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you won't miss future stories and life lessons that can help protect our families and communities. Main itawan nat